I have the great pleasure of being with Perry King today on the location for his new movie, The Divide. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Glad to do it. Pleasure to.
One of my favorite of your movies is The Wild Party, James Ivory's wonderful movie with James Coco.
Jimmy Coco was just, the wonderful lessons he taught me. Not so much about acting as about survival on a film set. That was a difficult shoot, that film, for various reasons, and God, did he help me through that movie, and with great advice.
This is Dale's sword. Ain't he gorgeous?
How do you do?
How do you do?
She saw his features sharp and clean. He looked sporting. He looked keen. He made her think of squash rackets, polo, and yachting, and dinner jackets. He had that air of poise without pose that only a well-bred person shows.
Sweetie, everybody's waiting. Come on.
Johnny, it's Dale's sword.
How do you do? Nice to meet you. Come on, everybody, it's screening time. What are you drinking?
That's something that has been a overwhelmingly predominant experience for me is people rich in skill, rich in quality, people that are extraordinary people helping me, generously giving me their thoughts, their advice, their help, all the way along. Jimmy Coco is a great example of that, or George Hill.
Or James Mason in Mandingo.
Yeah, he's the prime example, actually. No one was ever more generous and kind to me than James Mason. And he said many, many things to me that were invaluable, but this is James Mason's advice about acting. Back then I'd make endless, copious notes on pads, and I'd go over my notes before a scene, and I was working so hard to make sure I got each element and quality in. And one day, finally, James Mason, who treated me like his son, we were playing father and son, but he really was that way to me, it's just so good. And he said, Perry, and I'm quoting him, he said, what we're paid to do is to believe that what's happening is really happening and has never happened before. And he said, it's that simple. It's not easy, but he said, it is simple. Keep it simple. And I took I trusted him completely, and I threw all my notepads away and all that, and I just tried to do just that. He's exactly right. That is the key, because I don't know, if we cut the camera right now, and for some reason we had to start this interview again, my job would be to say just what I've said, but say it as if I'd never said it before. That's what film acting is. And it's surprisingly hard to do that, but it's very simple. The way to do it is to think, that didn't happen. I'm starting right from now, Often between takes, when you're waiting for some element, because film, as you know, is a very linear process. You have to have one department does their job, then the next, until you're ready to roll. So you have to wait. So your job as somebody working on a film crew is usually to sit and wait, and when you're needed, be quick and dive in there and do it perfectly fast right now, and then go away and wait, right? So often the other departments are stuck waiting, and in that time, wonderful things take place. Dick Fleischer said to me, for example, he said, a good script is filled with promises. And he said, you don't have to deliver on the promise, although it is better if you do. But he said, it's the promise that pulls you through. An obvious example of that would be High Noon, come 12 o'clock, I'm going to kill you, right? Well, immediately the audience is thinking, what time is it? What's going to happen? How much time does he have left? It's a great promise. And of course, that film delivers on that promise. But isn't that a great piece of advice? The promise of something coming, So, for example, we start this film with a shot of me in front of a barn, staring at this barn. It's dawn, and I'm walking in, and then I walk into that barn, and you hear a pause, and then you hear a sound of sadness, of loss, a wail from that barn. And then you begin. You don't answer the question of what that is, you begin. That's a promise, you know. If we did it right, if it works, it'll be, what the hell happened in the barn? What's going on in the barn? What's he wailing about? Who is that guy? You know, and you get those answers, but not for a while. We'll see if, you know, this is all, I don't know. You never know when you start on a film if it's going to work or not. But I got a great film in my head if I can just get it on the hard drive.
The recent passing of your mother was the impetus for this to get started. Tell us how The Divide came to be.
Well, it's been a dream my whole life to make my own film, ever since I became a film actor or started working in film. And I always thought I wanted to do that. And of course, as we all do, I thought someday I'll this and someday I'll that. And my mother died. She was 97. She was ready to go. There's nothing sad about it at all. Wonderful, really. Her children were all around her. But after she left, all 5 of her children, we all had similar experiences. We all started thinking the obvious thought, which is, who's next? And clearly it's one of our generation. That's the way it works, right? And that was fine too, except that if that's true, and all of us have done this in our lives, all of her 5 children, we all thought, wow, there's no more some days. There's now. We got to do it. So I thought, I must do this. And Janet and I have been working on this, Janet Brown, the screenwriter, and I have been working on this for a long time. And we were working toward it, but somehow I hadn't, up until about maybe 2 years ago, I thought of it as some wonderful game that I was playing, but I didn't really expect, I didn't consider actually the reality of doing it. And then I thought, I must do this, and I really absolutely must do this. It would be really stupid to follow my mother into the grave, as I will someday, and never make my own film, which is something I've always dreamt of. And so Jana and I thought, let's just make it happen, and we proceeded to do so. About an old man who's experiencing drought. Drought in every sense. Drought of his land, his beloved ranch that he's had. His cattle are barely surviving. The land is parched. Drought of the mind. He's experiencing what we would today call the beginning of Alzheimer's or dementia. But back then in '76, it was very different. It was senility, or even less specific. It was, he's getting old, he's losing it, he's getting soft. You know, I think that was a phrase they used back then. And you were on your own if you had that back then. And everybody kind of stayed away from you because you were just difficult to deal with. No support. So he's experiencing that drought. And then he's experiencing also the drought of his family. His daughter he's estranged from his daughter for reasons that he brought on himself. And he's got no one left. His wife is gone, and he's all alone. And a young man, played by Brian Kaplan, comes into his life looking for a place to do some work, and that's it. And starts working as a field hand. And initially, my character, Sam Kincaid, is, you know, just confusing and bad-tempered and just not somebody you want to hang out with. And I give him a place to stay that's just barely better than living in the woods, you know, because Brian's character, Luke, is also in need of redemption. So it goes on from there, but it's a story about the drama of ordinary life. To me, that's what I love to see, is movies about that. People like me. I always think you walk past somebody on the street and somebody you don't even look twice at, a very ordinary person. But if you knew their life from the inside, their life would be filled with drama, because everybody's is. That's the way life is. And instead, Hollywood makes these movies about people with capes that fly, and it's fine. Anyone's welcome to like anything they want, but I don't respond to that. I want to see a movie about me, about somebody whose feet are stuck on the ground because there's a thing called gravity, and how do I deal with that gravity in every sense in life? And that's what this old guy is trying to do. Make his life make some sense before it's over. And he's struggling. And Janet just created a story that moves me so much. His daughter comes back into his life for reasons, resistant, but has to come back. Luke pulls her back in, and all three of them, actually there's 4 characters that experience redemption for very legitimate reasons. So it's a very satisfying movie, I think. And I guess the last thing I'd say about it is, I'm almost scared to say this, the end moves me every time I think about the way this movie ends. And I think if I can just get that, what's moving in my head, if I can just get that into the hard drive, you know, I will have succeeded. You know, how to get that movie in my head into that hard drive, that external hard drive in the camera. You know, you remind me of movies, and immediately what I think of is how gloriously kind so many people were when I was young, and they would help me. They were so good to me, like George Roy Hill, who directed Slaughterhouse-Five. And one of the things he said to me that I thought long and hard about is, we were waiting for a setup. I was a kid, and he was talking about directing, and he said 50%, these are his words, 50% of making a good movie is casting, he said. 50%, that's a big chunk of a movie. All the elements that go into making a movie. And I never forgot that, and boy, did I pay attention to that when I cast this. I worked really hard, and the perfect example of that is Brian. And he's standing right here, but I'll embarrass him, but it's absolutely true. He's such a rock. I've learned in 1 week of shooting, all I do is point the camera at him. I have to do nothing. I just say, here's the setup, Brian. Go. I mean, I keep thinking of George Roy Hill saying that to me, and he was exactly right. Because I worked, from my side, very hard to let the world bring me Brian, and thank God it did. He's wonderful in this.
Here with Brian Kaplan, who plays Luke Higgins in The Divide. Talk to me a little bit about working on location, having the actual spaces here. This is not a set. You're not confined in a phony soundstage with plastic plants and a bunch of giant lights overhead. You're working on real earth. Does that make your performance easier in any way?
Yes, it's a huge help, I think. You know, you really, you feel like you don't have to do anything. You're in, you know, I put the wardrobe on and I'm immediately dirty. You know, and I'm climbing fences, and you know, I'm feeding horses, and I'm riding horses, and I'm, you know, doing ranch hand stuff like our, you know, chickens will escape and around picking up chickens and putting them back into the pen. It really helps. It helps you as an actor. You don't have to do much, and I think, you know, if you're fortunate enough to be on location, especially this and The Divide, where you're in a drought to begin with, it's kind of, it's easy. It's one less thing you have to really kind of think about.
So what's it like to be working with Perry King?
Perry King is by far the most generous man I've ever met. So down to earth, so open. You can really, you know, ask him anything. He's available. I've worked with, you know, people that just, you know, you couldn't get an answer and you had to kind of figure it out on your own. And yeah, I mean, he's there for you. He's like your, you know, biggest fan, and he wants you to succeed as much as he does. And yeah, it's pretty cool to work with him. Yesterday I was doing some scene, I can't remember, and I just wanted to keep going. I was actually happy that we're having like a sound issue or something, because I love performing. I love doing that stuff, so I could do it all day long. You know, kind of as an actor, you're kind of, you never really know, I think, where your next job is, so you gotta really enjoy the moment that you have and stay present. So that's what I'm doing here on The Divide. And the character Luke, I play this young ranch hand who's kind of comes from a troubled past, and he's drifted his way somewhere to this ranch. And I kind of love those kind of characters, the ones that have this inner conflict, and you're not really sure, you can't really figure them out, and it's just a great role. It's a great story, and I was like, man, if I get a chance to read for this, or I'd be happy. So I did, and kind of turned out all right because I'm here. So.
Brian, thanks so much for spending a few moments with us here on the set of The Divide. We're very excited about it.
what an honor to be here and work with Perry King for sure. So.
Oh, thank you, Matias. Thank you so much. It hadn't run for many years, and I had it on my property, and I just didn't need it. And I thought, oh, now I know why I own this truck. We need it for the movie. This guy's name is Roscoe. Yeah, I have a lot of old junk. I mean, like this thing, just something beautiful and it's been around forever, you know? The value of doing it the way I'm doing it is it gives me the right to not fall prey to things that I wouldn't want to do. I don't want to, if I got investors in Hollywood, for example, they would have said, yeah, well, we like your movie and here's what we think you have to change. And at that point I said, no, no, thank you. Yeah. I'm going to do this the way I believe it should be.